So let me introduce our next speaker, Saket Goyal. Saket is a principal leader in the ASIC Products Division business unit at Broadcom Incorporated, a leading global semiconductor manufacturer in the area of data center, networking, software, baseband wireless storage, and industrial markets. Saket is responsible for planning, architecture, and overseeing the implementation of DFT design solutions for IPs and ASICs in the area of artificial intelligence, storage, and networking. He received his BTech in Computer Science and Engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, IIT Kanpur, India, and MBA from Santa Clara University. Saket enjoys long road trips, reading books, and hiking.
So I'm here to talk about the 3D IC DFT flow development using the new Tessent product line called Multi-Die. And I think we had the keynote from Chinmay in the 3D session, so this will be a follow-on. And you might see some repeat of information, so I apologize in advance, but let me just go through the slides. So I'm going to be talking about the Broadcom ASIC products, and we'll talk specifically from the challenges in the DFT area from the products that we do. And then we switch over to the specific challenges in the area of the 3D IC. So I'll explore more what Chinmay already talked about. And in terms of what are the key requirements for our ASIC products as it pertains to DFT. And then we'll follow on with the IEEE 1838, which is a new standard. And that's the baseline for our flow development. And then wrap it up with the what is the testing solution for 3D IC that we are employing for our product lines, and then cap it up with the summary. I just want to acknowledge the various teams within the Broadcom and in Siemens. So we had to come to this stage in the 3D IC, we had a collaboration amongst the worldwide DFT team in the Singapore, Bangalore, Fort Collins, and San Jose Design Center. And we also had support from Jan from San Jose, Mohit from India, who is probably not here, and Simon from Poland. Yeah. So let's just start with the Broadcom ASIC products that we do. So I think people have talked about the technology scaling, and from a DFT perspective, what we see is a number of faults growing per square millimeter because of that, and the new type of defects which are coming into the picture. And with 3D, it's probably going to be even more challenging as we go from 3 to 2. IP integration, so there are a lot of IPs which are getting higher in speed. 200 gig SerDes, Gen 6 PCI, DDR6, and the HBM3 and 6.4 gig or higher data rate. And one of the challenge in all these IPs is there is a concurrent development happening for IP and for the design. So we don't have a lot of breathing room to give the feedback and then improve the test quality. So that's a real challenge we face in every technology. So the IP designers want to say, I'm done, but we say, as a DFT organization, no, you are not done until you meet my requirements. So it's a constant battle that we have to go through for every technology. Packaging, so I think Lalita talked about that this is the age of the packaging because of the heterogeneous integration. And that brings challenges for us. How do you define the known good die? What is known good die? There's a consensus need to be reached on the definition of it. And the other part is in the 3D IC, when you assemble the package, when you assemble the dies in a package, we need to be able to test individual die and the interconnect within the package. That's a key requirement before you ship the product to customer. There are kinds of design we do. could be low power or the high power, but in the low power, there are different challenges. There are multiple voltages, which is a known problem today, nothing new. And then there's another issue with the, ATPG vector has certain power, profile that or activity factor that we say, okay, you target certain activity factor, but does it really correlate with the functional activity that we do with the hierarchical design? It's a constant challenge, and I don't think anybody has an answer today. I think especially for us and maybe for a lot of people in the room, the product cycle is shrinking, and with the heterogeneous integration, expectation is you can build the Lego boxes and do the tape out in less time than before. And the challenge from a test side is we don't have a lot of opportunity to have the feedback given to the design team and incorporate the feedback into the design. And the other challenge is, how much to do before the tape out. Are we good to go to the tape out and not have a silicon risk when the product come into the AT or into the the system level testing? We are seeing a lot of designs with a lot of key customer where they want to go to the production from first silicon within 2 months. And that has challenges from a quality, qualification, bring up. So everything needs to hit the ground running from day one. Other part is the system scaling. So there's a lot of requirement to reuse the DFT infrastructure for in-system testing, monitoring, and diagnosis. And also we talked about the security in the keynote. So that is also a key requirement for our design. In terms of the 3D, I won't go through every bullet here, but the known good die definition. So to define a known good die, it generally means the highest possible coverage. So to minimize the yield impact on the package. Yield is really the key factor in the 3D design. And we don't have a lot of pads to play with. The PDN is a challenge at the wafer level because you don't have, all the contacts at the probe because of the micro bump or the hybrid copper bonding. And we don't have the advanced probing technique. We're still dealing with 130 micron probe pitch on the ATE. So to define a known good die, there are a lot being done on the wafer. And that increases the test cost and the tester capacity. Other thing in the 3D domain is when you assemble the dies using hybrid copper bond or interposer in 2.5D, is it really necessary to test before you do the full assembly? Is it really necessary to do the testing before you do the full assembly? Because as you assemble more, you're putting more component and they are expensive. So is there a trade-off that need to be done? And we don't know the answer today, but hopefully we'll know it soon. I think we talked about the test each die at the package level. So that is a first and foremost requirement. We need to be able to test each die at the package level along with the interconnect. The in-system test, I think, is a key requirement for not just for 3D design, but for all design. And the maintaining the yield is so we can be profitable is also a requirement. Voltage scaling, this is another big area of unknowns. When you assemble the dies which are fast, slow, slow, fast, and then you can change voltages for each die. There are variation across the die. So it's a big area of unknowns, and we don't know what we will get to it finally. But from a test assembly, test operation perspective, the need for tracking the die to its performance, and a lot more information about the die is necessary so we can assemble the appropriate dies together. Thermal management is also an area of concern. It is being highlighted in many industry, many forums. And last but not the least, is the silicon debug. I find it still very challenging to debug the monolithic design from a diagnosis perspective, and 3D is going to be yet another challenge. To pinpoint a flop or a location in the design is going to be extremely challenging, not just from a diagnosis, but from a failure analysis, taking picture, debonding the package and the die. This is going to be quite challenging. Anyway, so given all these challenges, I think the first and foremost is how do we get access to each die, each DFT structure within the die from a package level. That is first thing we need to solve. And to solve each of these problems. Let me go through the key requirement for our product line. We use hierarchical DFT, the flow that is developed based on the Tessent. There are some wrapper scripts which has collateral going into the physical design and then the timing closure flow. And that needs to be very, very efficient. We run hundreds and hundreds of blocks across multiple design, and the resource requirement is very tight there. All the IP that Broadcom develops are integrated within our tap controller that we design. So our tap controller is IEEE 1149.1.6 compliant, but it also has features to integrate a lot of IPs that are proprietary within the Broadcom. These IPs comes with the existing retargetable pattern because they have hierarchical tests built with the standard EDT solution. So we need to be able to reuse those IP as is in a retargetable pattern manner. There are third-party IP that we use, and again, we need to be able to insert them, insert die JTAG, and extract and control. And like I said, the design cycle is actually shrinking. So what that means is we need to be able to complete our insertion, ATPG, DRC, and coverage for the whole design in less than 1 week. And when I say design, it means not just one die, but multiple dies. And the Saket pattern generation TDF is again, runs into 1 to 2 days for the whole design. We also need to maintain the highest possible coverage for these design, which runs into 99 and 93 for Saket and TDF. I already mentioned the time to production is 2 months from first silicon. So Tessent actually so far has helped in provide solution to help solve each of these problems for our monolithic and 2.5D designs. So we expect the same for 3D designs going forward. But the key requirements don't change. So I talked about the access problem. So what we have selected as a solution to solve the access problem is the introduction of IEEE 1838 as a baseline solution to make sure we can access each of the DFT structure. So I'll give a quick overview of it in terms of what 1838 is. It basically allow one to access each die from a package level, whether it's tap controller or the scan network, and it provides the consistent infrastructure, so we can plug in multiple dies from various vendors. And it has 3 components. One is SCM. This is called the serial control mechanism, and it is a mandatory features in the standard. And what it does, it allow you to access the die tap from package. So that's the orange boxes in the picture. DWR is basically, the die isolation. It is very similar concept in a very crude manner, which we do for core wrapping. and those are represented by the red boxes. This is also a mandatory feature. The FPP, which is called Flexible Parallel Port, is an optional feature. I don't know why it is optional, though, but it's basically used to control and observe the die level pins, and the expected usage in the area of the ATPG or the logic testing is the scan in, scan out. So that is the baseline standard that we are using for our 3D products. And what I will show you is how we are using the Tessent multi-die solution to, target each of the component using the Tessent multi-die. So these are just the keywords from the standard, but how they get implemented using Tessent is this what is going to be talk of the next few slides. So again, I will skip this slide because Chinmay already talked about it. So I think in the interest of time, let's just skip it. But again, same concept that Tessent has given us, retargetable pattern, IEEE 1838, SSN, etc. So let's talk about the first part, which is the HCM, the tap controller. So this picture is kind of busy, but I want you to focus on the ovals, the red, green, and the blue. So let's start with the red ovals. So there are 3 dies stacked on top of each other. And the red ovals are basically, we need to be able to do the wafer level testing. And to do the wafer level testing, we need to have access to the tap controller. So there are sacrificial pads attached to each die. Each of the dies other than the base die or the bottom die, where you can do you can access the tap controller at the wafer level. And at the package level, and actually that is done through something called PTAP. PTAP is nothing but your standard tap controller, but it has support for 3D. But you can think of existing tap controller for all practical purpose. And then there is a new component called STAP, which is really required for die-to-die communication of the tap data transfer. And this is a key part of the IEEE 1838. So what STAP allow you to do is, from the package level pin, from the bottom die all the way to the top die, you can access the tap controller in the top die from the package level pin. So you go from the package level pin to the PTAP to STAP and so on. And these connections in the green could be copper bond connection, or these could be micro bumps. And the way we have done within the Broadcom, like I mentioned, we have our own tap controller which supports a lot of IPs. So existing tap controller has been used as is with some minor enhancement to support 3D. And the STAP is a new IP that we are using from Tessent. So that solves the first problem, which is the SCM part of the standard. The second part is the DWR and the various test modes. So this slide is kind of busy, but what I want to focus main is there are these yellow lines in the table. So these are the new test mode or the new test mode for the scan chain that are being built to allow us to do the interconnect testing between the 2 dies. So I can't really read it, but it's called die X test mode and the X test multi mode. So these allow you to test the interconnect of the die. And to support this feature, the baseline DFT flow that we have for hierarchical test requires very minor changes to support the DWR integration into the design. So we can reuse our DFT flow, which is built based on Tessent, to allow us to build the second part of the 1838 component. The next part, which is a big one, is called FPP, and that is implemented using SSN. So in the case of 3D, the way we have used SSN for the 3D design is probably not the intended usage that probably Mentor Siemens, thought about it, but they help us design the solution for the 3D, the data transfer for the scan. So what happens here is there is a SSN bus goes from the package level to the bottom die and to the top die, and but rest of the design is still based on the traditional EDT based scheme, traditional EDT based compression. So we are not going with the full SSN based solution for the whole design. It's still SSN is used for die to die data transfer here. And we can do pattern retargeting from block to top to die to the package using this method. And we can reuse our IP, which are built with the hierarchical test, with traditional EDT as is. There is no need to change there. So basically this use of SSN has allowed us to, sped up our development to support the 3D IC, which are going on right now in our product lines, without making a wholesale changes to incorporate every bit of SSN, which is quite a lot of work for our flow. Let's see. Yep. And I think we term this thing called SSN Lite. It's a term that we sort of invented, but this SSN Lite gave us a way to still achieve what we want to do. This is probably not the most optimal use of SSN from a test volume perspective, but this is still allow us to move forward with the intended testing for all of our current product. This is a more detailed picture. So the SSN, basically the tool allow you to build a pipeline between the die, and you can have a variable number of pipelines, within each die, right? So, and you can have package level SSN bus and then the SSN clock going from bottom die to top die. It's a source synchronous clock, and we are looking into anywhere from 200 to 400 megahertz range for this clock. Yeah, I think the picture is annotated with the pipeline flops and probe pads and the HCB pads between the die. So in summary, basically the current hierarchical DFT flow for Broadcom APD product line is extended to support the IEEE 1838 test access infrastructure. And we are able to keep the internal scan architecture to traditional EDT for now, at least to move forward to support our 3D designs. And we use the SSN for the data transfer within the die. And like I mentioned, Tessent Multi die has enabled us to, make key changes, which are necessary changes to support the 3D designs, and still reuse a lot of our test infrastructure, IPs, and still achieve our goal to bring the product into the market.